Howdy, and welcome to Wildly Inaccurate with JR, your source for advanced Blood Bowl strategy. I'm JR, and in this 5-part series, I'm going to talk about the math around what happens on and after an armor roll. So, armor rolls and the various injuries in the best edition yet of Games Workshop's best game and one of the coolest board games of all time, Blood Bowl 2nd Season. You heard me, haters. BB 2020 does have flaws, but there's so much to love. Okay, yeah, anyway, this video is about what happens after a knockdown, the dreaded armor and injury rolls. Yes, I spell armor like a Yank, because that's what I am. This is part 1 of 5. In this video, I will provide some basic concepts before we dive into the nitty-gritty. Part 2 is about unmodified armor and injury rolls. Too many dice gamers don't really know how dice games work, so I'll give you a foundation to build on. In addition to the math, I will highlight key conclusions you can apply immediately. In the third video, I'll go over the various modifiers to these dice, such as damage from the crowd, foul assists, damage skills like Claw or Mighty Blow, plus defensive traits like Stunty and Thick Skull. In the fourth video, I will show you how these modifiers interact with each other and offer some comparisons. And then finally, we will go over the casualty table, which is its own beast. I will discuss the apothecary, the regeneration and decay traits, and niggling injuries. There will be advanced armor and injury discussions to follow, such as my video on the riddle of armor about how the same odds might be seen different ways by different coaches even at the exact same time, a piece on the total value of a knockdown, and plenty of others, including a historical analysis of armor and injury rules since 3rd edition, an article on the net value of a foul action, and more. Okay, so about dice math. One thing I can't stress enough is that dice math does not by itself win games. You have to do the right math. You have to do it productively, and you have to see it as part of a larger picture. Looking back on crazy plays and asking what are the odds is fine. But if all you do is use that to justify your self-pity, it's not going to do you a lot of favors. One funky quirk of this kind of reasoning is that probability can be boiled down into hard math, and that makes people think it's automatically important or predictable. And sometimes probability really is important in Blood Bowl, which heightens the illusion. Keep this in mind throughout all types of dice math reasoning, and let the context tell you what kind of math to do and how much credence to give it. There are 4 times when you use dice math, and they're all different. You use dice math during team management, during pre-game planning, to make in-game decisions, and for post-match musing. Any of these may involve armor and injury rolls, though personally, I think I do more AV and injury math in team management than in other phases. Your mileage may vary. First, when you make your team and when you pick skills and hire players between matches, it's helpful to have hard math to compare skills and stats. You have plenty of time to think and to be meticulous at this stage. However, here the dice math is more abstract. You don't know exactly what the circumstances will be. You just want to set yourself up to get good stuff. For this reason, you should be gaming around the big picture. Dice math may be used in team management when deciding on skill progressions or when debating between 2 different player positions with different stats. Second, before you want to size up your opponent and see their roster and their strategy. You want to know your enemy. This means you have a specific foe to game around. You can look at their roster, you can get an idea of their strengths and weaknesses. Maybe you can watch their replays if you're able to, and you can sum up the math in advance. Note that in some formats you don't know who you're going to play until they show up, and this doesn't apply the same way in that case. When you're planning ahead, you shouldn't overthink the next match. There's a lot more variance in one game than there is in a whole season, so you should just be aware of the math while you work out your basic plan A and plan B, of course. Armor and injury math may help you figure out how to set up, whether to run square or trap screens, whom to foul, or how to use your big guy or blitzer. Third, you use a simplified version, a streamlined math with lots of shortcuts while the game is going on. This is the most important math, even if it's often the sloppiest. You know it's applicable because you're in the moment using it. While the clock is ticking, though, it's helpful to remember the key numbers just by rote and to simplify your math as much as possible. This is where familiarity pays the biggest dividends. AV and injury math might be used early in the drive when deciding where to blitz against the screen, or later when debating whether to mark a player, for instance. After the match, you can look at specific scenarios to see what went right or wrong, whether you were outplayed or lucked on, and to muse on the odds of some improbable event. After the match, you have plenty of time to crunch the numbers, review what happened, see what you could have done better. You can be really precise, too. But it's tempting to overweight your conclusions just because you experienced the outcome and did the math. So many dice get rolled that crazy outliers are just a thing, and for every one that irks you, there are many you don't even notice. On Fumble, you can see how many blocks each team threw, how many player turns were played on each side, and even watch a replay of the match. That's helpful. One last thing. Armor rolls are not like dodges or blocks. Most Blood Bowl rolls can go awry, and there's a nugget of wisdom that says roll as few dice as possible. Okay, so that nugget is a bit simplistic, but it points to a larger truth. And that larger truth mostly doesn't apply here. Armor rolls are not like that. More is better. Well, usually. If you're rolling armor after a knockdown, anything that happens from this point on out is gravy. From your perspective, never mind is the worst thing that can happen. There are some exceptions, though. Fouls chiefly, but also stabs, projectile vomit, and chainsaws. On a foul, you can get ejected. With a stab or a successful saw or puke, the defender may hit you back if you don't break their armor. But most of the time, armor rolls are house money. So let's have a recap. Dice math is important and useful, but only if done right and done productively and kept in perspective. There's a lot more to this game, and all the probability knowledge in the world won't save you from a sea of ones and skulls, or for that matter, pows and sixes. There are 4 times you use dice math in Blood Bowl: when building and developing your team, ahead of the match, during the match, and afterward with the benefit of hindsight. Each of these offers possibilities and limitations, and there's a right way to approach each. Finally, it's important to note that armor rolls from knockdowns are gravy. This is not true for fouls, and it does not automatically justify your overblocking, but all else considered, when it comes to armor rolls, the more you make, the merrier you'll be on average. Again, all else considered. This was the introduction to armor and injury rolls. In the next video, I lay out the basic odds on unmodified rolls against quote-unquote standard opposition. And then after that, we go into the various modifiers, see how they combine, and then talk about casualties. Links are in the description. Thanks for watching Wildly Inaccurate. I'm Jackass Rampant. And I'd ask you to like if you dig what you're seeing, and to subscribe if you want more. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll answer to the best of my ability. But most of all, have fun and good luck.